Mark Rogers TV back with you to talk college football and what has become our weekly top 25 rant. Carving up the top 25 and where the voters and the pollsters made mistakes. We would love for you to join in. This has become fun for me to carve up the top 25, but I want to hear from you because just because I say it doesn't mean that can't be argued as well. Looking at the current top 25, I see the first six teams as Florida State, Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, Auburn, and Texas A&M. Looking at the AP top 25, that's the current top six. I only have one issue, and that's Oklahoma at number 4 right now. Again, this is not necessarily to say that Oklahoma is not the fourth best team in the country or possibly the best team in the country. They just really haven't played anyone to date. They've played Tennessee. They played Tennessee at home. They were pretty dominant in that win, but it's Tennessee, and Tennessee has 2 losses to date. For Florida State, yeah, the Noles did not look great against Clemson. They won that game at home, but they didn't have Jameis Winston, and Clemson's a pretty good football team. Not currently in the top 25, but Clemson, to be sure, is one of the 25 best teams in the country. Just put a 50 spot on North Carolina, lost to Georgia as well, of course. So Florida State, they beat Oklahoma State, and I think Oklahoma State's going to prove out to be a pretty good team. Not a great team, but a pretty good team that's probably going to finish 8-4, 9-3, something in that range. So Florida State has not looked overly impressive, but their 3 major wins are decent. Clemson, North Carolina State, who was 4-0 against a bad schedule, 4-0, and Oklahoma State. So I don't think Florida State's played the best. They would not be my number 1 team right now. Oregon at number 2, of course, has the big win against Michigan State. Very impressive. They've got a win against Washington State that was shaky on one hand, but at the same time, another Power 5 conference win at this point. Alabama has been the most dominant against probably the best team in Florida. Florida's not ranked currently in the top 25, but Florida is roughly a top 25 team, and Alabama posted 645 yards of total offense in that game. Alabama's really good, and if Alabama beats Ole Miss on the road this week, I believe that the Tide deserves to be number 1 at this point. Auburn's got a case as well, going to Kansas State. Yes, they struggled, but they still beat a top 20 team on the road. Auburn's got a case at number 5, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a case. They have beaten 2 of the more quality teams that anybody has in Arkansas and a dominant win against South Carolina. So the teams that I have issue with right now, Oklahoma at number 4, hasn't beaten anybody decent. Now they've got TCU on the road coming up this week. That could be an impressive win for OU on its schedule coming up this Saturday. But for right now, Oklahoma at number 4 is too high. Baylor at number 7. They are the biggest travesty in the top 25. Baylor, schedule somebody. We blasted you in the preseason schedule post that we did for every Power 5 conference team. Baylor did not play anybody outside of conference. Buffalo, Northwestern State, and SMU. Horrible scheduling by Baylor. So Baylor will play some teams, of course, within its conference. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, most notably West Virginia to a lesser extent, Texas this week, So once Baylor, if they win those games, they can vault into the top 25 and go up the polls. But right now, what are we basing this Baylor number 7 ranking on? A win at Iowa State by 3 touchdowns. That's their best win. That's their most impressive showing, beating Iowa State by 3 touchdowns. Baylor should not be anywhere close to the top 10 in the country right now. Notre Dame, I have issue with Notre Dame being number 9. Again, Notre Dame starting this week with Stanford, later with USC, with Florida State, with Louisville. No, they don't have to win all those games to be a top 10 team, but they have to play somebody. They have yet to play anyone, and it's not their fault. They schedule tough. It's just a backloaded schedule. Notre Dame has not played anyone to date. Their toughest game to date is Syracuse. Syracuse got blasted by Maryland by 25, so Notre Dame's not played anyone. Yes, the Michigan game is supposed to be tough, but we know what Michigan is this year. So Notre Dame way too high at number 9. I've got an issue with Ole Miss and Mississippi State, just a slight issue here. Ole Miss is 11, Mississippi State 12. Mississippi State played the tougher game to date and got an impressive win at LSU. Ole Miss, their biggest win right now is Boise State. So for right now, and it's not going to matter because Ole Miss has Alabama coming up this week, and that SEC West is gonna beat itself to death between Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. And if you don't think LSU is going to jump up and scare somebody, and Texas A&M, of course, LSU is going to jump up there as well, I would expect. No, they might be down, but between their games against those 5 other teams, yeah, they might scare someone. And Arkansas has already scared Texas A&M. So Ole Miss at 11, Mississippi State at 12. I've got an issue with that, but it's going to work itself out unless the pollsters continue to do some bad voting. Stanford 14, USC 16. We've talked about this in previous weeks. USC beat Stanford. They both have 1 loss. Therefore, USC should be ranked ahead of Stanford. I know that it's going to get more complex as we go through the season. Then you base it more on resume. But right now, with 4 games in, 5 games in, you go head-to-head, especially when the teams have 1 loss each. They have the same record. So USC should be ranked ahead of Stanford, especially since they just came off of another impressive win in defeating Oregon State by 25 points. And then I've got an issue with Ohio State at 20. Ohio State might be the 20th best team in the country. They might be better than that. They may roll through the rest of this thing after what they showed us on offense against Cincinnati. If they can clean up the back 7 on defense, yes, the Buckeyes may be able to get on a roll, and they might live up near expectations without Braxton Miller. That Michigan State game, of course, is going to be huge. And since they don't play Nebraska and Wisconsin in the other division, that's going to be difficult for Ohio State to gain any other points from the voters past that. So they might be better than the 20th best team in the country. But right now, they haven't beaten anybody. Best win, we just saw it, Cincinnati. And they lost to Virginia Tech, who now has 2 losses. So compare Ohio State with the final 5 teams in the poll. Oklahoma State, 1 loss. Lost to Florida State by 6, by 1 possession. East Carolina beat the team that beat Ohio State in Columbus. East Carolina also played South Carolina tough, also blasted North Carolina. K-State, their 1 loss against Auburn, one of the, we would expect, top 5 teams in the country. Mizzou at number 24. Yes, their loss is horrible against Indiana, who then got blasted against Maryland. But Mizzou beat Central Florida, and of course they beat South Carolina this past weekend. Quality win on the road. And TCU at number 25, just simply because TCU has not lost a game. TCU has yet to play anyone. Its toughest game against Minnesota, but they will play Oklahoma at home this week. So Ohio State should be ranked below all those teams because they don't have the resume at this point. They have the name recognition. They don't have the resume. So I have an issue with that. And BYU at number 19, despite number 18 BYU, despite the undefeated record, have not really played a tough schedule as well. It's interesting to note in the coaches poll, the USA Today coaches poll, Florida State has dropped out of number 1. Alabama takes over number 1 despite having only 15 first place votes. Florida State with 26 first place votes. So they've got 11 more first place votes, but they're ranked lower than Alabama. That shows you that a lot of people are not impressed with Florida State, barely getting by North Carolina State, barely getting by Clemson. Of course, Jameis Winston not playing. Clemson outplayed Florida State, and then, of course, struggling against Oklahoma State in the opener. So Florida State's probably at the 4 and 5 spots on some people's radar. So again, Baylor, the biggest travesty at 7 until they play somebody and defeat them, starting with Texas this week, although Texas may be a top 50 team. So again, that's going to come later with Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Kansas State. Oklahoma at number 4 shouldn't be there. Again, things will start to correct itself, possibly starting this Saturday with Oklahoma taking on TCU on the road. Notre Dame too high at 9. They do play Stanford. If they beat Stanford, that justifies the ranking. Ole Miss at 11. If they can beat Alabama, wow, then that really justifies the ranking. Ole Miss will be undefeated with win against Alabama. Then we really have a debate on our hands if we throw Ole Miss in the mix way up there in the top 5 where they should be if they beat Alabama and are undefeated, of course. All right. Those are my gripes with the top 25 as it stands going into week 6. Would love to hear what you have to say about the top 25. and who should be higher, who should be lower, and where I've missed it. Let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.